It's not just me, we've all been obsessed with Jack Black and Tenacious D's cover of Hit Me Baby One More Time, right? When I tell you, when that started playing during the credits of this, I just got more hyped. And it got me hyped and feeling sentimental for some weird reason about Kung Fu Panda. And after watching Kung Fu Panda 4, I can say is that this is hands down DreamWorks' most consistent animated franchise. And it's honestly just more awesomeness into this franchise itself. Now, I'm not here to say that this is the best Kung Fu Panda movie. I think it definitely has some missteps. It's overall just a solid entry, but it's still an awesome one, even with certain things that feel a little bit missing overall from here. And I'm excited to talk about Kung Fu Panda 4. Definitely leave your thoughts down below. Hit that like and subscribe button for more. And if you don't know what Kung Fu Panda 4 is about, well, after Po is tapped to become the spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace, he needs to find and train a new dragon warrior while a wicked sorcerer plans to resummon all the master villains whom Po has vanquished to the spirit realm. Just a little bit of background context, since I've started this channel, I have not really had a lot of time to talk about Kung Fu Panda on here. So for people who don't know, Kung Fu Panda is my personal favorite DreamWorks animated franchise of all time. I absolutely adore the original films, and specifically Kung Fu Panda 2, which really I think is the best DreamWorks animated film ever to be created. From a storytelling perspective, from the animation to the action, everything in that film was hands down handled in such a perfect manner and still holds up to today. It doesn't rely on pop culture jokes. It doesn't rely on catchy music. It hands down just delivers an excellent and very much poetically themed story into this world. Kung Fu Panda 3 I actually hadn't seen until a couple days ago, and it was enjoyable for what it was. But after all this time, it's been a while, we're getting another Kung Fu Panda film. And for me, there's a couple things that I didn't really see to this. I didn't see the marketing, I didn't see many of the ideas, but there was a couple questions I had raised, and one was, where's the Furious Five? They're not on any of the marketing or the posters, and we're marketing that Po's villains are coming back and that there's this evil sorcerer bringing them into reality. There's a lot of ideas I have in here, and then there's rumblings that a new character that Awkwafina is playing may be taking forth and taking over the entire franchise. A lot of questions I had with this. Going in, I didn't really have the highest of expectations. I checked those expectations at the door, just expecting a fun, another film in a DreamWorks franchise, and I came out saying, yeah, that was still awesome. This is still the most consistent animated franchise they have, but it easily is just the most solid entry out of it. I kind of compare it to Kung Fu Panda 3, which at the same time is a film that I quite enjoy, maybe takes a couple bigger steps than this one does, but it's another solid entry. And maybe it's because I want them to hit the heights of what Kung Fu Panda 2 was, and even the classic, and honestly, maybe even downright the freshness that the original Kung Fu Panda had, but it doesn't do any of that. It very much is just another story in Po's life. And I have a lot of thoughts on this. So starting out with my pros, the number one thing I want to talk about really is the animation. DreamWorks has kind of been one of those animators that I feel like sometimes I watch some of their stuff and I'm like, oh, you know, I've seen it all before. And other times I'm like, wow, this is incredible. The How to Train Your Dragon franchise is a big part of that, specifically within the Hidden World, the last one that they had made. And ever since then, kind of all the films in between, I was kind of just been like, okay, like the animation's pretty cool, it's pretty unique. And the best one, though, I think we can all agree, is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. They did an excellent job with some new animated style in there that doesn't copy Spider-Verse, but kind of does its own thing. And Kung Fu Panda 4, I was happy to see it didn't try to take a new approach. Did it try anything new? It did its own thing, taking the same animation style, but making it even better. And the animation here, like, I did a whole marathon of Kung Fu Panda 1, 2, and 3 right before heading into this movie, and the animation is, like, to another level. It is so stunning, it's so beautiful. I honestly, like, kind of was sitting there, like, in awe of how gorgeous it is. Just even the little bit of details, like, on Po's father or Po himself, like, the fur on them just looks so realistic, and all that animation also goes down to the action scenes, which the action has always been phenomenal in the Kung Fu Panda franchise. Like, each film, I felt like it always got better and better, and I think there's an argument to be made that the best action so far in the Kung Fu Panda franchise is in this movie primarily. Maybe not just action scenes, because I still think Kung Fu Panda 2 still has some of the best in terms of animation, but maybe just set pieces. Like the set pieces in here were just a ton of fun and really much kept you engaged and thrilled, and specifically this sorcerer, I think there's a lot of cool elements to them. It's nothing that Poe has faced before, and I was happy to see that, and say the least. It's something that Poe has faced before, so it was nice to see that in its entirety, and it's one of the things that really keeps you engaged. The humor in here is nice. And of course, Jack Black was just born to play Poe. He's so perfect in the role, and it's just wonderful to see how much Poe has really much gone forward as a character. But in this film, there is a new character played by Awkwafina, who is in a way the sidekick to Poe of this entire adventure, and I am one of the minority. I like Awkwafina in most things that she does, and I actually think she was great in here in terms of voice acting, but also in terms of the character and where they took the character. Certain things are a little bit predictable. A little bit more about that in my mix and my issues with the film, but overall, I liked her character, and there's some things that they set up between her and Poe that I kind of sat there and I was like, you know, if this is the start of the next Kung Fu Panda trilogy, I'm not against it. Alongside this, Viola Davis is a newcomer playing the sorcerer, the chameleon. Awesome. Viola Davis is just a force to be reckoned with in any position and performance she gives, and she's great in here. Dustin Hoffman's always great. Bryan Cranston's great. James Hong is great. I really loved both of them in here, and primarily they have this whole subplot with the dads that maybe like wasn't the most joyful or like best thing in the world, but they did have a lot of the comedic relief in here, and every single one of the time the jokes land. Ke Huy Quan is awesome in here as well. Wish we saw a little bit more of his character. And let's talk about Ian McShane. Ian McShane returns as Tai Lung, and a little bit disappointed with how they use Tai Lung in here. I think that's gonna be more thing that I have to talk about in my mixed aspects, but if you're coming here to see Poe's familiar villains come back, I think you should prep yourself to be a little bit disappointed in that. I'm getting too far ahead of myself to kind of round out the rest of my pros. I really liked the score in here, thought the music was great, and overall I just had a blast. Again, I talked about set pieces. There's one set piece that takes place in this like restaurant that's like on a cliff, and the whole way that it kind of just shifts back and forth was, again, engaging. It was entertaining, and I like that. This is where I want to start heading over to my mixed aspects, and my mixed aspects of the film is overall just the story. The way that I can compare this story is it's kind of one of those Disney animated sequels that would have came out in the 80s or 90s that very much were a direct-to-video, and you watched them and you're like, that was entertaining, that was fun. It's not the best. And that's kind of how I felt with this film. It's more of just a solid entry. It always felt like something was lacking and something was missing from it. And we'll talk about that in my issues. But the story itself is just another chapter in Poe's life. But it feels like something you would have watched in like a spin-off cartoon where Poe is now having to do this and potentially pick the next dragon warrior. It's like, okay, it feels so on the side of everything else. Like, of all the importance that we've gotten, where like I felt like at least the last 3 Kung Fu Panda films had like a big giant step forward for the character, and you would think with the position of what he's needing to do, you think this would be bigger and grander, and it's actually not. It's very small scale, and I didn't really know how to feel about that. And I think there's just certain things with the story that it kind of tackles into that. Again, I mentioned Tai Lung is not really in this that much. Same with the Furious 5. And there is an argument to be made that yes, it makes sense why these characters were used the way that they were used, but for the problem that so many people had with Toy Story 4, which I did not, I'm a Toy Story fan, I did not have this problem with Toy Story 4, the problem that a lot of people had was how they really much sidelined all of the original side characters. Buzz, Jesse, Mr. Potato Head, Slinky, all those. The list can go on and on from there, and more focused on Duke Kaboom, Ducky and Bunny, Gabby Gabby, all that stuff. Kung Fu Panda 4 is kind of the similar thing here. Now, yes, there's a whole subplot with the dads, but it really is about Poe and Awkwafina's brand new character, and they focus on them and the chameleon, and some new ones that they meet along the way. The Furious 5, and this is where I start to get into my issues, are not in this film. Like, they are, but they're not. Like, let me put it this way, they don't have the voice actors back. So you see them, you never hear them. And I found that to be incredibly disappointing because of how important they were in the last 3 films, primarily the first 2. And I think as characters that are significant to Poe's life, and while Poe is going into this next journey, it feels a little bit lackluster to not include them in this. On top of that, Tai Lung, he should have never been marketed into this, to be honest with you. I think it's actually like a travesty. Yes, Ian McShane comes back, but the other 2 actors who voiced the other ones, no, they're not in this. They're not in this. You see them, but they're not in this. And again, a little bit mismarketed on there. It is more about Viola Davis's The Chameleon. Again, this is all I've been hearing from other people. I've not really personally watched a lot of the trailers for this or even seen a lot of the clips. That's just one thing to keep in mind. Some of you might be mixed on that and might like the choices that they did with this. I think there was a story to be in here for the Furious 5, and primarily I probably would have shifted that in here instead of the comedic story they had with the fathers. Which I like the comedic aspect, but I think there was another storyline that could have been added in there to fit Poe's chapter a little bit stronger. Personally, for me, that was the biggest gripe that I had with the film, and I think it's one of the things that kind of holds the film back from being that next step forward for Poe's life. And overall, this film kind of just feeling like, okay, it's kind of set up in a way. And I can totally see them going forward and calling it Kung Fu Fox, or if they do a Kung Fu Panda 5, it more being towards passing the mantle off to Awkwafina's character. Like, it feels like one of those where we're passing the torch. And it didn't feel like it had that oomph and that passion to do so. Again, I can't believe I'm talking like this deeply passionate about an animated kids film, but I am because of how much I adore the original 2 films and even like the 3rd one. Maybe I'm just getting a little bit too nitpicky at that point, but it was just certain things that was kind of holding me back, going like, I feel like the story should be a little bit stronger here. Still enjoyed it. I found the film to be awesome. It just has some issues here and there that I think hold the film back, and if they were to continue doing more Kung Fu Pandas, I would hope that they would bring back the Furious 5 and kind of give this film the more grandiose effort if it needed to, with him passing the torch. Because anytime we've seen that happen in movies, it always feels like a giant thing going forward. Ghostbusters Afterlife, Toy Story 4, Toy Story 3 in some way, in some instances, and even within the MCU and thousands of different franchises, it just feels like this wasn't the one, and it feels like it should have been. So enough with my rambling, let's get into my final thoughts on Kung Fu Panda 4. Kung Fu Panda 4 was just more awesomeness into DreamWorks' best animated franchise. It's a nice little chapter that may not get everything right, but features some of the finest animation from the studio and the best action scenes yet. The film lacks original thoughts, and I can see many being disappointed that certain characters are completely sidelined. I honestly thought the same on that. Best way I can compare it is, remember the straight-to-DVD Disney sequels that sometimes would be awesome but lack certain ideas? That's this. Safe, no big risk, great animation, like honestly stunning, and incredible action. Just another fun chapter with Poe, and that's really much about it. So with all that said, I'm going to give Kung Fu Panda 4 a B. Thank you so much again, guys, for watching. Make sure to leave your thoughts down below, hit that like, subscribe button, and of course, until next time, stay classy.